Welcome to Forgotten Murders. Tonight's episode, Aileen Wuornos, the serial killer of Interstate 75. If you're new here, please subscribe and tell us which city you're tuning in from. Florida, 1989. The highways stretch endlessly, sunburned asphalt shimmering under the weight of heat and silence. Drivers vanish, bodies begin to surface, dumped in ditches, hidden by the wild brush that lines the interstates. Each death different, yet somehow the same. Police whisper of a drifter, a woman with wild eyes, a cigarette always hanging from her lips. Her name is Aileen Wuornos, and by the time they catch her, the world will call her the first female serial killer in American history. But long before the mugshots, before the trials and television cameras, she was just a broken soul, walking the edge of every dark highway she could find. February 29th, 1956, Rochester, Michigan. A baby girl is born into a world that never wanted her. Her name is Aileen Carol Pittman. Her mother, barely 16. Her father, a violent drifter who would never hold her. He was already serving time for child molestation. By the time Aileen is 4, he hangs himself in prison. Her mother abandons her soon after, leaving Aileen and her brother Keith in the care of their grandparents, a home soaked in alcohol, rage, and secrets. In that house, love was replaced by fists. Her grandmother drank to forget. Her grandfather beat to remember. And somewhere in between, a little girl learned that silence was safer than trust. At just 11, Aileen starts to change. She finds comfort where she can. In the woods behind the house, in the glow of fires, she sets herself. By 13, she's pregnant. The result, she claims, of an assault by one of her grandfather's friends. The child is taken away for adoption. By 14, she's thrown out of the house. No family, no home, just the endless road ahead. A frozen Michigan highway, and a teenage girl with a stolen jacket, a cigarette, and a heart full of anger. That's where Aileen's story truly begins. Not as a killer, but as a survivor, shaped by cruelty, and driven by a hunger to never be powerless again. By the late 1970s, Aileen Wuornos was a ghost on the American highway. She drifted south, hitchhiking, hustling, living off cigarettes, lies, and the kindness of strangers. Sometimes she sold her body. Sometimes she stole what she needed. But she always kept moving. Florida felt like freedom, warm, wide open, and full of men with wallets and loneliness. She learned the rules of survival there. Smile when you want to scream, lie when you need to eat, and trust no one. Then came Tyria Moore, Daytona, 1986. Aileen met her in a gay bar, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Tyria was quiet, plain-faced, with soft eyes that made Aileen feel seen for the first time in her life. They became inseparable. Two women on the run from everything. They lived in motels, shared cheap beer, and dreamed about a normal life. Aileen promised she'd make enough money for both of them, that they'd have a home, a car, maybe even peace. But peace didn't come. Instead, came hunger. Bills piled up, jobs disappeared, and Aileen went back to the highway. The only place that ever paid her, in one way or another. She'd leave Tyria in the motel, then head out to the interstate with her gun tucked deep in her purse. Every car that slowed down was a chance, or a threat. Every ride, a gamble. Night after night, she came back with cash, excuses, and a growing resentment toward the men who used her and threw her away. Something inside her was hardening. The girl who once begged for love was turning into a woman who believed love was just another lie. And soon, that belief would explode into violence. Florida, 1989. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that clings to your skin and turns headlights into halos. Aileen Wuornos stood on the shoulder of Highway 19, thumb out, hair tangled with sweat and dust. To passing drivers, she looked harmless, another lost soul chasing luck. But inside her purse, beneath a folded napkin and a lighter, rested a .22 caliber revolver. Cold, patient, ready. Her first known victim was Richard Mallory, an electronics store owner. He offered her a ride, maybe a drink, maybe more. They pulled off the road into the woods. Hours later, she walked out alone, clothes torn, eyes glassy, gun still warm. Aileen said he tried to hurt her, that she had no choice. But when police found his body, 2 bullets in the chest, wallet missing, it looked less like defense and more like execution. Then came David Spears, Charles Karskaden, Peter Seams. Each one found the same way. Their cars abandoned, their bodies dumped in the brush, stripped by the heat and the flies. A pattern forming. Clean shots, stolen vehicles, rage disguised as survival. Every time she pulled the trigger, she told herself the same thing. They would have killed me first. But it wasn't always fear that guided her hand. Sometimes it was fury, the kind that comes from a lifetime of being used and forgotten. She'd drive their cars to pawn shops, sell what she could, and go back to Tyria with a smile. They'd buy beer, laugh, watch TV, like nothing had happened. Like blood could be washed away with motel soap and cheap whiskey. By the end of 1990, the highways of Florida had become her hunting ground. A stretch of asphalt soaked in secrets. A place where a broken woman learned how to play God in the glow of oncoming headlights. January 1991. Aileen Wuornos was out of time. For months, police had been piecing together the puzzle. A trail of fingerprints, pawn tickets, and abandoned cars, all pointing toward one woman and her lover. Aileen didn't know it yet, but Florida's highways were no longer her hunting ground. They were a trap. At a rundown biker bar in Volusia County, she sat at the counter, denim jacket, wild hair, a beer sweating in her hand. Her laugh was rough, her eyes darting. Outside, undercover officers waited, watching every move. When they moved in, it was quiet. No struggle, no chase. Just a moment of silence, as if even the air knew it was over. Across the state, Tyria Moore was already in police custody. Terrified, crying, she told detectives she wanted no part in the murders. They offered her a deal. Full immunity if she could get Aileen to confess. So they wired her up, put her in a cheap motel, handed her a phone, and told her to call the woman who loved her more than life itself. The call began soft, Aileen's voice cracking with relief just to hear her. But Tyria was cold, controlled. She told Aileen the cops were watching her, that she needed to clear things up. Aileen hesitated, then sighed, a long, tired sound that seemed to carry years of pain. "They got you scared, huh?" she said. "Don't worry, Ty. I'll take care of it." Hours later, she confessed, not to a cop, but to the ghost of the only person she'd ever trusted. She admitted to everything. The robberies, the shootings, the bodies left in the woods. All of it. When they brought her in again, she didn't fight. She just looked at the officers and said, "I robbed them, yeah. And I killed them too. Because I had to. They were gonna hurt me first." But even as she spoke, there was no fear. Just a strange calm, like a storm that had finally burned itself out. Outside, the media was already waiting. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted her name. Aileen smiled, flashing her teeth like a wounded animal bearing its last defense. From that moment on, She was no longer a drifter or a prostitute. She was a headline, a monster the world couldn't stop watching. In the courtroom, every seat was filled. Reporters scribbling notes, cameras humming softly, the air electric with curiosity. In the center sat Aileen Wuornos, chains on her wrists. A faint smirk on her lips, eyes darting between the jury and the flashing bulbs. The prosecution called her a cold-blooded predator, a woman who lured men with sex, robbed them, and shot them down like animals. The defense painted her as a victim, a woman brutalized her entire life, striking back against a world that had done nothing but hurt her. But Aileen didn't help herself. Some days she sat silent, staring blankly at the floor. Other days she snapped, shouting, cursing, calling the jurors scum of the earth. She wasn't playing the part of a victim anymore. She was done performing. As witnesses described the crime scenes, she would roll her eyes, scoff, or laugh under her breath. The cameras loved it. The world did too. To them, Aileen had become a symbol. Part tragedy, part spectacle. Talk shows dissected her past. Psychologists debated her sanity. Everyone had an opinion, but no one really wanted the truth. When she finally took the stand, her voice was flat, unshaken. She admitted the killings without hesitation. "Yeah, I shot him," she said. "They'd have raped me if I didn't." But as the evidence piled up, the self-defense claim began to crumble. Too many victims, too similar, too deliberate. By the end, even the jurors looked exhausted, as if they were staring into something too complicated to understand. It took them less than 2 hours to return the verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. When the sentence was read, death by lethal injection, Aileen didn't cry. She just tilted her head back, smiled faintly, and muttered, "I expected it." In the years that followed, she would give interviews from death row. Her eyes grew harder, her words sharper. Some days, she spoke about God. Other days, she spoke about revenge. "Society's evil," she said once, staring straight into the camera. "You all just sit there watching the freak show. Well, the freak show's over." But it never was. The cameras kept rolling. And so did she, unraveling, one broadcast at a time. The cell was small. White walls, steel bed, a single barred window where the Florida sun burned through like judgment. For 12 years, Aileen Wuornos waited there. Death row became her world. She spent her days writing letters, pacing the floor, talking to herself. Sometimes in whispers, sometimes to voices only she could hear. She spoke of government plots, of sonic control, of being tortured by the prison staff. Some nights she prayed, other nights she screamed. Journalists came and went, each hoping to capture the mystery of her madness. She gave them sound bites like bullets. "You're all hypocrites," she spat during one interview. "You want to know what evil looks like? Look in the mirror." But behind the fury, there was something quieter: exhaustion. She'd lived her life fighting everything: men, cops, the system, herself. And now, there was nothing left to fight. October 9th, 2002, the morning of her execution. Aileen sat on her bed, hands steady, eyes fixed on the window. Outside, the world moved on. Reporters setting up cameras, guards standing in the humid dawn. She refused her last meal, said she wasn't hungry. At 9:30 a.m., the guards came for her. The corridor to the chamber was short, silent except for the shuffle of chains. She walked with her head high, no tears, no hesitation. Just that faint, crooked smile. They strapped her to the gurney, leather against skin, bright lights overhead. She turned her head toward the glass, where witnesses waited. And then she said, clear and strange as ever, "Yes, I would just like to say, I'm sailing with the Rock. And I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all. I'll be back." Her voice didn't tremble. She smiled once more, then went still. At 9:47 a.m., Aileen Wuornos was pronounced dead. Outside, the cameras clicked. Inside, her body lay beneath a white sheet, the hum of the fluorescent lights filling the silence. The woman the world called a monster was gone. And somewhere beyond those sun-scorched Florida highways, the wind carried her name. Faint, restless, and never quite gone.